But first, we want to do something a little different here. Speaking of Thanksgiving, I want to go through our list of the top 5 things that we love on Thanksgiving. It's a little different. I'm sure there will be a football twist to this as well, knowing that this is a football podcast. But basically, 5 things that we just love about Thanksgiving, and there are more things than that, obviously. But we have narrowed our list down to 5 things. And before I start this, I just want to get this out of the way, okay? The reason this is not on my list is because it's a given. Yeah, spending time with family. I have to get that out of the way. That is my favorite thing about Thanksgiving. It is so much my favorite thing. I don't even need to put it on the list because it goes without saying. Spending time with family, getting together, absolutely best part of Thanksgiving. Now that we got that out of the way, number 5. Number 5 has got to be, Meisty. You mentioned it before the podcast. Not having work, right? I mean, I love the job I have. I love my job. But it's just the fact that there's football on all day. If I had work, I would be driving myself nuts. What's the score to the game? God, maybe I can come home for an hour to watch some of the game. But now you don't have to worry about it. You can just sit down and watch football like on a Sunday when there's no work, and you can just sit down and watch football unless you're busy, and it's fantastic. So number 5 for me, Meisty, not having work, no question.
Friedman is eating food, just plain eating, just getting to sit down. No one's gonna tell you you can't. That's too much. It has to be finished. Every time I've ever sat down Thanksgiving, whoever the host is, whether it's my mother, a neighbor, and food has to be finished. Food has to go finished, and it's like okay, and so you sit and you gobble, 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 gobble.
Okay, yeah, food is a great one. I actually, number 4 is along that theme. I split food into 2 just because there are so many good foods that I like on Thanksgiving that I needed to put 2 of them on the list. Number 4 is stuffing. I love stuffing. You could sort of have it individually as its own dish, or you could have it with the turkey. But it's so versatile, right? It's like a good vegetable where you could have it on its own, but you could also have it with a protein, with chicken or meat. So I love stuffing, especially if it's made well. Homemade stuffing, very annoying to make, by the way. But if it's made well, fantastic. Stuffing is my number 4. I'm going to go a little more specific with the food, just because food deserves 2 spots on Thanksgiving in this in this list.
Now, Rocky, I'm going to start with my 4th here, and this might be a little shock to some people that it's so low on my list. But watching football is number 4.
Okay.
Watching football is my number 4, Rocky.
I'm all ears. Why? Please explain.
I mean, what do you mean? It's football. You get to sit down and you watch football, period. Anytime there's football, it's a great thing to do.
Yeah, but number 4, okay. Anyway, it's your list.
Exactly.
It's your list. I have to respect it. Number 3 for me is one of the most underrated parts about Thanksgiving, because when people think about Thanksgiving, they think about traffic. I love the fact that there is no traffic on Thanksgiving. I can go anywhere in 2 minutes. It's fantastic. I mean, you go down the streets, like during COVID, the 6 months right after COVID happened, it was a similar concept. Not many cars were out in the streets. There was no traffic. Thanksgiving is like that, even more extreme every single year. On a Thursday, you can go, I mean, I used to drive 50 minutes, 45, a drive that took me sometimes an hour and 15 minutes. It was like a 40-mile drive. It took me like 38 minutes on Thanksgiving. I mean, just unbelievable. I love just not having to worry about traffic. Fantastic. That's my number 3.
Speaking of the traffic on a holiday, one Christmas morning, I drove with my cousin down to Florida, from Baltimore to Florida and to Miami, and we got there in 12 hours. I left 7 o'clock Christmas morning. I arrived 7 p.m. That's like 12 hours flat. And I mean, I may have been speeding a little bit, but I got enough to be getting, I literally gained, it's an 18-hour, 16-hour drive. I shaved 4 hours.
No, that's great timing. That's great timing.
Definitely
Fantastic timing.
All right, ready for my number 3?
Yeah, baby.
Watching bad football is my 3rd. I love turning on the game. Thanksgiving, it's super hype. Everyone's hyping it up. The gambling is through the roof. The fantasy lineups are through the roof. Everyone's going nuts. It's like, oh, we have Thanksgiving football, and then it's like Christmas basketball. You sit down and it's an awful game, and you're like, what are we doing? Like Patriots Vikings. Like it might be 6-3 final score, and we're gonna be like, did we seriously just waste our entire Thursday night watching Patriots Vikings? Oh, do I love that? That is like when people get pissed off about a bad game. It's football. That's why 4 is football and 3 is bad football.
I hear that. It's like Thanksgiving is such a highly hyped day in the football world because it's like, well, it's become a part of American tradition is that you have your feast, family comes over, and you have football. It's like synonymous with Thanksgiving, right? And it's like every year it happens to be most of the time the games are not particularly good. It's very funny. But obviously we're hoping that this year that goes ahead and changes. My number two is another food. One of my favorite foods in the world. Happens to be a Thanksgiving staple. Number three, I said already, was no traffic. So I have number five, no work. Number four is stuffing, and number three is no traffic. Number two is one of my favorite desserts in the world. I love desserts in general. Pecan pie. Yes, I say pecan. Pecan pie. I love pecan pie. You gotta say something about pecan pie. As long as you don't have to make it with a cup of sugar like a lot of people do. You can make it with like honey, maple syrup, something else. It's not overpoweringly sweet, but I love nuts. I don't love pecans plain, but once you put it with the sugar, you make them like sweet with whatever the sugar is, honey, maple syrup, sugar, and you put it in that just gooey consistency with the pie crust on the bottom. It's just an overall fantastic dessert. So shout out to pecan pie. Gets my number two on the list of my favorite things on Thanksgiving. And by the way, I'll just give a shout out to the rest of the foods, the turkey, whatever you have. That is food is just such a big part of Thanksgiving. And we're grateful to have these things every year. We look forward to having these wonderful dishes. So number two is pecan pie for me, Meisty.
But you said it on the podcast. No work. I'm a guy that works. I work 5:30 a.m., 6:30 a.m. days. So for me, when not getting to turn off my alarm in the morning before I go to bed, I turn off my alarm and I'm like, oh yeah. So definitely number two. No work. Relax, chill, kick it, hang out with some friends, family. That's the obvious, so kicking it and relaxing on a Thanksgiving and watching football while doing it all is obviously that's my number two.
Yeah, so that's. I think the best thing about no work is not having to set your alarm. That's always a great feeling, right? When you don't have to set that, especially you wake up at like the crack of dawn. So you're like, well, I'm setting my alarm for 4:30 in the morning in general, and now I don't even have to set my alarm. That's a fantastic feeling, no question. So for you, I definitely hear that. Fortunately for me, I don't have to get up quite as early, so that's why it's not as high on my list. But number one for me is obvious, Meisty, and no matter how bad the games are, obviously everyone can predict what my number one thing on Thanksgiving it is, and it's a full day of football, right? I mean, over here on the West Coast, we have 9:30 a.m. It starts the games, right? Because it's 12:30 on the East Coast. So 9:30 a.m. starts the game. By the time the games are over, it's sort of like a Sunday, except it's even a little earlier. So it's like 9:30 a.m. By the time the game's over, it's about 8:15, 8:30, and I still have, I can have my nightly routine that I normally have. So, it's fantastic, especially here on the West Coast, where you don't have to take away your night, and yet you still get to watch football all day. And let's be honest, the games aren't always great, but especially, I think a bunch of years ago they added in that Thursday night game, which is generally a more competitive matchup, generally teams that are more closely competitive with each other. So, especially since they added that, the games are a little better. This year, on paper, you have some good games, which we'll get to in a minute, but football is my number one on my top five favorite things about Thanksgiving, Meisty.
Was my number four, right? And it shook the world when I said that, but I'll tell you why. And this is the reason why. The number one thing about Thanksgiving, period, I spoke to Morty about this earlier. There's nothing, absolutely nothing better than watching the Cowboys lose on Thanksgiving. All right? It is the greatest. Yeah, because all the hype, the fans are out there. They're all pumped. And you're watching 100,000 in Cowboys Stadium, just heart-wrenched, broken, just not sure what just happened to them. Cowboys lost on Thanksgiving. I don't even know the last time they lost on Thanksgiving. Maybe it was last year, the year before. I don't know, but we hate seeing them every single year. And guess what? That's why when they lose on Thanksgiving, it's like when your team wins the AFC Championship game. It's like, okay, one more game. That's the feeling of the Cowboys losing on Thanksgiving, because you're like. And you're guaranteed a morning video of Stephen A. Smith saying, how about them Cowboys? And, it's great. It's the best part about Thanksgiving. I look forward every single year to 4:30 p.m. to sit down and watch a garbage Cowboys team take on some other garbage team from the NFC East. And just, I love it. I love watching the Cowboys lose on Thanksgiving.